Tov, today's daf is daf. Boker Tov, today's daf is daf Chof Zion in Nidrim. As we learn again for four shleima for Chai Rachel Bas Peril and Yom Tov Lipman ben Dvar Feyechaya. From the Mishnah on Chof Zion Amanal. Nidrei Onsen. This is the fourth kind of neder that we talked about in this parak that doesn't even need Hataras Chachamim, doesn't even Hataras Nadarim, that it's automatically, it's meaningless because you only made it. In this case, it's onsen. Onsen means it was made either under duress or there were circumstances beyond your control. This Mishnah is going to talk about where you couldn't fulfill the neder or you couldn't abide by the terms of the neder because of circumstances beyond your control. For example, Reuven wanted to invite Shimon to eat with him, or the Gemara, the Gemara explained the case before, or maybe perhaps Shimon wanted to go to Reuven's house. Maybe other people invited him too. So he said, look, you put a neder on me that will force me to eat at your house. For example, you say, if I don't eat at your house, all your food, all your assets should be forbidden to me. So Reuven put a neder on Shimon that if Shimon doesn't eat at Reuven's house, he'll be forbidden from all his assets. However, it was, in other words, if it was Reuven was urging him, that's really Nidrei Zeruzin. But here, speaking about even if Shimon wanted, Shimon asked him, put a neder on me because all these other people are inviting me, so I want to come to you, so put a neder on me. And so there was a neder on him, and if Shimon didn't show up, he was going to be forbidden from his assets. But then what happened was, Shimon got sick, or his son got sick, and he had to stay home to guard him, to watch him, or the river, all of a sudden there was an unforeseen flood, and the river overflowed. He wasn't able to pass through the river. He wasn't able to get there. Circumstances beyond his control. So that's considered a neder that's beyond your control, and therefore he doesn't have to abide by the neder. In other words, in this case, Shimon would not be forbidden from all of Reuven's assets because the circumstances are beyond his control. And the Ran points out over here that this is considering their own son. The Ran says that this isn't even though Afagav the Ran at the very first of the widest lines, the beginning of the widest lines of the page, Afagav the Lavonus Gamaru, the fact that he can't, that you can't make it because there was a flood or a hurricane or a tornado, that we understand. But even for his son was sick, so he had to stay home to watch him. That's not the biggest ones in the world. It's not like he really he lost the ability to get there physically. He couldn't get there. He just had to stay home to watch his game. And the Ran says in the next line, mutter, even though it's an ones ktsas, he calls that like a small ones, a very minor condition that was beyond his control. That's also neder onsen, and he doesn't abide by the neder. Now the Gemara talks about a different case.
Does this mean whoever, either the person making the neder or
either way, the person upon who the neder is effective, meaning in this case it's Shimon, the guest, and the guest couldn't show up because of circumstances beyond his control.
But even the guy who owned the house.
If the guy owned the house, the guy owned the house, what? He didn't show up.
He went to the hospital.
Okay, so Shimon could have still come and eat. You mean if he wasn't home, that kind of thing. Yeah, if the neder wouldn't apply because of that too, there would also be ones. So here the Gemara gives a different case. Who governed it? This is man. Let's say Reuben and Shimon were fighting in court over some issue, some financial issue, and Reuben needed more time. He had his all his arguments were in order, but he needed more arguments to win his case. So he wanted more time. So he asked the court for time. So the court said, "Okay, we'll give you 30 days." But that wasn't enough of an assurance. So he said, "I'll tell you what. I will deposit my rights, meaning the documents that showed his rights to the money to win the case, depositing it with the court, the Beit Dina. I'm giving him rights to you." But he said, "If I don't come back within 30 days, all my merits should be voided." In other words, these are my arguments. These are the reasons why I should win the case, and I void all my arguments. If I don't come back within 30 days, I need more arguments to win, whatever the reason was. He had to get out, or maybe he had to get out of town to take care of something. He said, if I don't come back within 30 days, I void all my arguments. Isness, of course, circumstances came up beyond his control. He was pressured below us and he didn't come. We're going to talk about a different kind of pressure later on. See, this pressure we're talking about in this mission means when he made the netter, whatever the netter was, they thought they would fulfill it. Reuven forswore Shimon from all his assets if he wouldn't come to eat there. They thought they were able to do it. And then something came up, some circumstance beyond his control. Here too, there was a circumstance beyond his control. He said, if I don't come back within 30 days, all my rights are, to this case, I void them. I have no argument. And he didn't, but then an accident happened, caused him not to come. Isness velocity wasn't him. Too bad, his merits are voided. His merits are voided because he said, not only did he say, if I don't come back, but he said, here are my arguments. He gave them to the court. And this is going to be the important point. He gave them to the court and he said, all these arguments to the judge, these are my arguments. If I don't come back with 30 days, destroy my arguments. I have no arguments at all. That's what he said. So Rav Huna said, okay, he didn't show up within 30 days, even though it was beyond his control. That's what we're going to talk about. Circumstances beyond his control. Think of a rape. Think of something where somebody forced somebody to do something beyond their control. Rav Huna said, your schuyot are bottled, because that's what he said. Amalei, so here the Gemara is going to deal with that. With this, how does that make sense? Amalei Rabbah is the gears. Amalei Rabbah, Anusu. When he said he was forced, it wasn't his fault. He couldn't come back because there was an onus there, where the river overflowed or the flights were canceled, whatever it was, he couldn't come. We know that the Torah released a person, exempted a person when they were forced. If a married woman commits adultery, she's chayiv misa. If she was raped, of course she's pater. The civil nar lo sasa davar. The Torah talks about a case where you have a namarasa, a betrothed young woman who was, if she committed adultery, she's chayiv skila. In the case of a namarasa, if she was raped, she's pater because pasizol nar lo sasa davar. We all know that if it's circumstances beyond your control, you're not chayiv. That's different. You want to kill her. I mean, you kill the rapist, right? The guy who raped her. So maybe it's different. You're not going to kill her if she was raped. Maybe that's only different. But by money matters and things of that sort, maybe if it's not a case of a capital case, maybe you would hold them responsible, even if it was against their will, was beyond their control. I have a time with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah just said Nidrei Onsen. Our case where Reuben said to Shimon, if you don't come to my house, you can't have any of my assets. You're forsworn. But time Nidrei Onsen, Hidiru Chaver Shiochalet, so you're going to get B'chalahu, Oshachal B'no, whether Shimon got sick or even his son got sick, as the Ran said, it's a very minor deferral. It wasn't like he couldn't show up. His son got sick, so he couldn't get a babysitter, Ever somebody tell you he couldn't get a babysitter? Sometimes that's a lame excuse, So you could have gotten somebody, but that's somewhat of an ones. Oshachal now, or the river overflowed, he wasn't able to come, like a flight was canceled, or the roads were closed. Snowstorm, we'd say, Harel Nidrei Onsen, it's an onus, even though, in other words, and he's exempt from abiding by the netter, even though it's not a capital case, it's only a money case. It's only that he can't eat the assets. So you see over here. So that's what Rabbah complained to Rav Huna. Rav Huna said that in the case where he deposited his arguments with the court, he said, if I don't come back, they're void. They are void, he said. What do you mean? It was an accident. Even our Mishnah see that an accident doesn't count against you, or an accident is something beyond your control. Ron points out that Rav Huna doesn't compare the two cases, because he says in the first case, in the case of where he deposited his assets, he should have known he's about to lose his money and lose his arguments, and he should have thought about possibly circumstances come up, and despite that, he didn't. In the case where the guy said, if you don't come to my meal, you're not going to eat. He doesn't care so much. Your assets will be forbidden, not be forbidden. There you can argue there that the cases are slightly different. That would be maybe Rav Huna's argument. But even according to Rabbah, who say, what do you mean? The Onus Rachmana Patre, or the case of Nidrei Onsen, you see they're not the netter is not binding in that case where circumstances came up beyond his control. Well, wait a minute. But we do see that where circumstances are beyond your control, it's too bad. For example, in the next case of Larabba, what about the famous cases that we have in Gittin, we had in Ksubas? How is it that we learn like this? A man says, man doesn't want his wife to fall yibum, right? And he's going on a long business trip. This was a common thing in those days. They went to war. They went on a long business trip. They don't know if they're going to come back. He says, you're divorced from today. Today, let's say in Cheshvan. If I don't come back, let's say by next Tishrei, a year from now, or almost a year from now, if I'm not back within a year, you're divorced from today. He died. He died on the road somewhere. Somebody killed him, or he died on the road. It's a get from today. Wait a minute, but it was an accident. He wasn't anticipating he was going to die. Am I? But the reason he couldn't come back is because he was dead. It's not like he said, if I don't come back and I abandon you, here's your get. I'm not going to abandon you and leave you in a guna. If I don't come back within 12 months, I don't want you to be in a guna. So I'm letting you. So you're divorced from today. But if he died, as opposed to an almana, right? He is an almana then. Right, exactly. I'm sorry, right. She's divorced from today, as opposed to an almana. If she's an almana, she's for yibam to his brother. If there were no children, and she's also the bad part is that she can't marry Cohen now. Whatever, all those circumstances are different, right? But he says, if I don't come back within 12 months, it's again. But it was against his will. It wasn't like he didn't want to come back. He couldn't come back because he died. And still you say, too bad, it's an ones. We don't care. Pardon? This isn't a netter. This isn't a netter. This is not a netter. We're just talking about cases of ones. In our Mishnah, the netter we say is not chal because of an ones. If it was circumstance beyond control, the netter is not binding. So Rav Huna brought a case where the ones that we're talking about when the circumstance beyond control, we don't care. You say you're schuyot or butler. You said if I don't come back within 30 days, my arguments over here are null and void. They are null and void according to Rav Huna.
In this case, this is not what he had in mind.
So the Gemara says he had in mind. You can argue he had that in mind. That's the Gemara's answer. He wasn't into my son. It was beyond his control. I mean, no. In the case of get, it's different. Why? That's exactly what he wanted. We're on the base now. Had he known that he was going to die, had he not died, he would have given her a get right away. If he knew he was going to die tomorrow, he would have given a get right away. Why? Because even though that would forbid her from marrying a Kohen, but he wanted to avoid the whole issue of Yibam and Chalitza. He wanted to avoid her falling Yibam to his brother. So there was different. There you could argue that the accident didn't prevent him from fulfilling what he wanted to do, which is to harm. The accident, the death was actually, Daka gave the get under the assumption that if he doesn't come back for whatever reason, even if he dies, certainly he wants to get the Bichal. Okay, so the Gemara says, what about this case? He wanted to come back. If I don't come back within 30 days, honey, I'm coming home. If I don't come back within 30 days, there should be a get. If I don't come back within 30 days, it should be a get, period. And he didn't say, it's not even mehayom there. It's not that bichal from today, in case he died. If I don't come back within 30 days, you get. Also, he came home, upaskim abra. The ferry was on the wrong side. He came home on the 30th day, and the ferry was across where he couldn't cross the river. All right, because upaskim abra. Amalu, he said, chazud asoy, famous case. We had this in many places, right? Look, I come back. I'm back. Don't you see me? I'm across the river. I'm here. It's not coming. That's not coming, meaning the get's chal. He didn't want it to be chal, right? Here he didn't want it to be chal. Not a case of death. He didn't want it to be chal. Remember, it's circumstances beyond his control. Favors on the side. Says no. Dilma unsa de migla shiny. That's different. That's an ones that's revealed, meaning it's apparent. It could be foreseen. You know that there's a ferry. You know you're going to show up on the 30th day and all the flights were canceled because of a snowstorm. You know that can happen. You know the ferry might be on the side. He should have foreseen that. There, it's not considered such an onus, right? Dilma onus the migla, that's different. Umabra migle onsa, that's an obvious thing. You know that the ferry isn't always, they didn't have an exact time. The Staten Island ferry leaves at 9:15 on the button. It goes from this way to that way. Or they had more than one. There was one ferry. You never know where it's going to be. No, he didn't say me'achshav. It depends what he said. If he would have said me'achshav, but from the time that he here's your get. If I don't come back within 30 days, it should be chal from today. Then it's from that point. And that was the first case where he said, if I come back within 12 months, it should be a get from today. So even if he died after 6 months, so death is what causes her to be, to leave the marriage, basically. No, but he said me'achshav, so it's chal from the day that he wrote it. In this case, he said, if I don't come back within 30 days, it should be a get. Even on the 30th day, it should be a get. But he didn't make it back by the 30th day because he couldn't cross the river. So then it's a get from then. But it's an onus. The answer is that's not really an onus. He could have foreseen that. Okay, Rav Huna. Okay, so these are the arguments. So again, Rav Huna says that we don't care about the onus. You deposited your rights with the court, too bad. You didn't come back within 30 days, even if it's an onus, too bad. You've lost your rights. Rabbi asked him, what do you mean? Ones Rachmana Patre, even in the case of our Mishnah, it's a netter. So we on the side, we mentioned about the cases of Gittin, but the cases of Gittin are not really a problem because the first case of Get, he wanted it to be Chal. It's not like he didn't get his, again, you say it's an Ones. No, that's exactly what he thought. He thought if he died, he wanted it to get to be Chal, so she shouldn't fall Yibam. And in this last case, it's not an Ones at all. That's why we don't look at it. Rav Huna, so Rabba is still arguing with Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, too bad, we don't care about the Ones. Rabba says, you are worried about the Ones. Ones Rachmana Patre. Rav Huna, even according to Rav Huna, okay, let's say he doesn't know what's the Ones. Michti asmachti. What's asmachta? Asmachta means I rely on something. That's why when you bet, if you hold asmachta generally is not kanya, bets aren't chal. A guy says, I'll bet you anything that somebody will show up today to davening or whatever. And he didn't expect him, he's not going to show up. You don't expect something to happen. That's why betting is usually people who bet. It's different today because, if you go in and you pay the games in Las Vegas, you don't really expect to win unless you're a fool. But sometimes when you bet on something, you bet because you really believe it's going to happen. So in a case like that, you really didn't mean to lose. So you didn't really want to do it. You're relying on the fact that these circumstances will be such. And we hold generally, it's an asmachta, basmachta lokanya. We generally hold that an asmachta when you rely on something, a reliance, when you expect something to happen, it's an assurance. Oh yeah, I expect something to happen. Here he says he knew he was going to come back within 30 days, and he says, okay, I'll deposit my stuff with the court, and if I don't come back with 30 days, you could throw them out, throw out all my arguments, make them void. That's something he didn't expect that to happen. A smachta doesn't work. A smachta does not acquire, meaning it shouldn't be effective, not because ones or not ones, even if he doesn't hold them ones, but it's an smachta lokanya. He says, shiny hach, it's different over here. Maybe normally at a smachta lokanya where I bet you $10,000 that my car won't be stolen today. Because what are the chances that it's going to be stolen? I didn't think, most days, my car's not stolen, right? So I bet $10,000 that it won't be stolen. Then it's stolen. I didn't expect it to happen. I really didn't expect it to happen. So you could argue that's not something smachta lokanya. But over here, Shaniach, the mitzvah and schusa, he deposited them with the court. He didn't just say, I bet $10,000 that my car won't be stolen today. I'll give you $10,000. He said, in other words, a smachta, like Ron points out, is where the guy said, in general, the guy said that, I bet this and this, and if this doesn't happen, I will pay such and such money. That's what I mean by an asmachta, that, if this doesn't happen, I'll pay this kind of money, that kind of a thing. And Ron points out, that's a regular asmachta. When he says, if this doesn't happen, I'll do this or I'll do that. But not here, where he took his arguments, all his, his affidavit and all his arguments that he was winning the financial case. He gave them to the court. He literally deposited them with them and said, they're yours. So here he went beyond an asmachta. It wasn't simply like an assurance. If my car is stolen today, I'll give you $10,000. It wasn't like that he promised to do something. Here he gave it to the court right now. So that's not an asmachta. It's still an asmachta. Even though he gave him the court for time, we learn. Mishapar, another famous case. Mishapar mixes chobo. What normally happens? You have a malva and a lova. The malva is the creditor, and he has a document that says that the lova borrowed $300 from him. Who has the document? The malva. Okay. Now what happens is Mishapar mixes chobo. The lova says, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll pay back half. I pays him back half. And normally in a case like that, you take away the document from the malva because you don't want the malva, right? If he didn't write a receipt, the malva, you don't keep the value because he might collect the whole thing again. If you pay the whole thing off, so what do? You take you tear it up, right? But here he didn't pay the whole thing. You don't want to leave it with the malva because maybe he'll come and collect the whole thing again. So what do? Hishlish as shtaro. He gave the star to a third party. What they call a neutral middleman, a neutral middleman. He gave it to a neutral middleman, and he said, so that the malva won't collect the second time. But Amr, listen, I'll pay him back the rest. Listen, I'll pay back. Let him hold it. If I don't pay the balance within 30 days, we should give. It's always 30 days, right? I'll give you 30 days to get out of town. 30 days. If there's 10 lo shtaro, give it back to the malva. Let him try to collect it. He can collect the whole thing again. If I don't give it back to him within 30 days. Give him the star. And he gave him the star, right? He gives man v'lonos, and if the 30 days kept and he didn't pay back, Rabbi Yossi Omer, and he didn't pay back the balance. He didn't pay the balance. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yitain, give it back to the Malva. Let him collect again. Let him collect the whole thing. Let him collect it again. It's not a case of ribbis because it wasn't done for the time. It wasn't done as ribbis. He said, give it back to him. Rabbi Yossi says you should give it to him. Rabbi Yehuda Lo Yitain. Rabbi Yossi says Lo Yitain. Rav Nachman Rav was the gadol there. Ein halacha Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi. Damar asmachta kanya says asmachta kanya, but rather asmachta lo kanya. Even though, right? So what was our argument before in Rav Huna? Rav Huna says in the case of depositing my arguments with the court, it's different because I deposit with the court. But even when you deposit with the court, it's still here you deposited with the other guy, and you say deposit with the judge. Listen, if I don't come back in 30 days, give him the document back. Let him collect the whole thing. In other words, what I gave him now was a gift, and let him collect the whole thing again, even though he gave him the document. He deposited with this third party, with the neutral middleman, and he said, if I don't pay back the balance within 30 days, give it back to him. Here he deposited with him, and still you say the halacha is not like Rav Yossi that asmachta kanya, but rather asmachta lo kanya, like Rav is Rav Nachman or Rav that no, that the halacha is not like Rav Yossi asmachta kanya, but rather in this case, if he doesn't pay back within 30 days, the neutral middleman is not supposed to give the document back to the Malva to collect again because he didn't really mean it. He just said, if I don't pay, I'm going to pay back 30 days. How many times people owe you money? Just give me a few more days. I'll definitely pay back. He thought he would pay it back, but he didn't. So it's not really a Kenyan. The Gemara says, no, Rav Huna is right. Why? Because he said, not only did he give it to the court, but he said, all my rights should be void. That's a strong lashon. The hilchos and the halacha is, even though the halacha the Ran points out is asmachta lo kanya, like when you bet and I say, I'll give you $10,000 of my car stolen, something I didn't expect to happen. Asmachta lo kanya. Asmachta kanya, but who the lo honest? That's if we're in circumstances beyond his control. Who the kanami made best and chashiv, only if you gave it to a court. Not in the case of where if I don't pay back the balance within 30 days, give it back to the Malva, there it's asmachta lo kanya. But if he gives it to a court, and the Gemara says best and chashiv, here the Ran and the Ram, they all argue whether what's the best and chashiv. Do you need a bezdin that's the Ram points out? The Ram says he has to have a bezdin that's musmachim and like mumchim. The Rashi points out she mumcha l'rabim. These are chashuv people. They give it to a court, to a real chashuv court, and the economy made bezdin gave it to the court, and he said to the court, listen, if I don't come back within 30 days with more arguments, the whole thing is null and void. And it wasn't circumstances beyond his control. So in Rav Huna's case, there were circumstances beyond his control. What in Rav Huna's case? The first case after the Mishnah, the guy deposited a schus with the court, and he said, if I don't come back within 30 days, my arguments should be null and void. Throw them out. And then Levat l'schus say, Isnas, he had an ones happen to him. He had an ones, he was forced, he was beyond his control, and he didn't come. Rav Huna said they're batal schus, but we don't say that because that was his argument. When do we say that you listen to what he said? My argument, if he deposited with a proper court with chashuv rabbis, or even with musmachim or mumcha, the way Rashi learns and the Rambam learns, they have to be musmachim. And he didn't come because there were not circumstances beyond his control. He just didn't show up. If he just didn't show up and he gave it to a proper court and he said, if I don't come back, null and void, then it's null and void. But normally, that's not normally a smachta is a bet. Or I'll do this if this doesn't happen. If I'm not back here, definitely this will happen. That's an asmachta, and normally we hold asmachta low kind.
It's like a statute of limitation for some of those patents. Is that what it is?
It's not exactly a statute of limitations. He said that my arguments are null and void.
It's every day, by the way.
Yeah.
Every day it happens. You have a judge will say, you have 30 days to do X, and if you don't, you lose.
Right.
That happens every single day.
Yeah. So again,
and people agree to it. So
right.
Therefore, they're making a net.
Right. But even without that, but here in the cases that you outlined, the court has the authority to take away the money.
Maybe that's what's going on here. And that's
Yeah. No, but right. But you see, the difference is that the court, whether it's a court today, a secular court, or certainly a rabbinic court, where you say hefker bezin hefker, they can do what they want with their money. The court has that authority. Here we're speaking about where the person, the litigant himself said that. He put that right.
He said this, but
right.
Why do you need a vested caution?
Yeah,
what's the difference?
To make it acceptable
because
to
get vested caution
for me, force or right, He says the Rashi here points out, the Ran is very long, goes through all different cases, but he says, the Rashi says, B'cholani plus milibin, you need all three. In other words, you need that he deposited it, he deposited with them, and he wasn't forced, and it was the best chashav. The low honest, he has to honest, and he has to give a kinyan, he has to give it to them, meaning I deposited with them, and he wasn't forced, and it's a best chashav. Otherwise, it's smach and a smach lo kanya. I don't think it's not statute of limitations in the normal way we think. Statute of limitations normally is a crime was committed, and after a certain statute of limitations, you can't prosecute him for the crime. But here we're talking about like Irving case where the guy says, either the court says it or the guy says, I don't,
Basically, documents have statute of limitation on it.
sometimes, I think crimes have a statute of limitations. I don't know if documents have it. No, so he said, that's what he said. Okay, you could argue, you could say it's a different kind of statute of limitations, right? He said, if I don't come back within 30 days or this certain amount of time, and he gave it to the court, he deposited with the court, he was mocked to them to the court. It's like the court took over his it's like, in a way, it's more like Prusbul. Why are you allowed to collect the Prusbul loan? Because it's not your loan anymore. It's the court's loan. Here too, he deposited with the court. He says, the court, my arguments are with you. And he deposited with them, and they're a chashuv group, and they have the authority to do that because they're chashuv, and they own his arguments now. And he it wasn't against his will. There were no circumstances. If there were circumstances beyond his control, like in Rav Huna's case, we don't hold like Rav Huna. So in all these cases, we say generally there's Rahman Patre. Only in this case, if the psak is the Rav Huna's wrong. The psak is only if he was not forced, and he gave it to a Besen Chashiv, and he deposited with that, and it was a Besen Chashiv, and they made a kinyan, and they accepted it, then they took over his arguments.
So somebody who signs a document in court agreeing to something, he's making a netter.
Well, yeah, but it's not a netter per se. They're forcing it upon him. No, a netter has to be in this form that you forbid this thing on you if such and such. It has to be a netter or a shvua where I swear that I will do something or not do something. But yes, in a court, if they made him swear, if they make him swear, right, and he swears that he won't. Yeah, that's a shvua. Correct. That's a shvua. And if he did it with an action, I won't violate the parole, and he violated with the action, chayiv a carbon, chayiv malchus. Right. Now, this is a different kind of it. We said onus. Onus is the first kind, is the fourth kind of netter, which is not hal at all. We said it. You don't even need a touch of the chum. Why? Because it was beyond his control. But there's another kind of beyond your control where it wasn't. You see, in the case we've been talking about today, have been where he made a netter and then he didn't fulfill the net. He said, if such and such and such and such will happen, I will come and eat at your house or whatever. And then circumstances prevented him from fulfilling the condition. Sometimes though, he makes a netter right upon under pressure. That's also an onus. Onus is beyond your control beyond your control. In case of a rape, it's both beyond your control and it's pressure, under pressure. But here, for example, when you made a netter, you knew when you made the netter that you were lying. But you did it under pressure. For example, people are coming to kill you. They say, give us all your assets or we're going to kill you. He says, my assets belong to the Beis Hamikdash, or they belong to the government. So they lied, right? All my fruit should be usher to me if they don't belong to the Hekdesh. So or the people weren't going to kill you, but they're going to destroy the stuff, So he's, you can't do it. Let's Hekdesh or whatever. Or to people who collect taxes unlawfully. They didn't have like a regular meches where there's a fixed fee for every item or whatever, depending on the country, etc. But they took whatever they wanted, they looked at you and they say, okay, give me 50% or whatever. These kind, Muhsin, she truma. So you swear to all these guys, these murderers or these people who are stealing your money from you, say, listen, it's truma. Even though it's not truma, and you make an error like that because it's under pressure. It's under pressure because you don't want to lose your stuff. Or Shein Shalvesa belongs to the court, it belongs to the king. These are royal taxes. Even though Shein doesn't belong to the king. You can make any kind of netter like that, but don't make a shvua. Beis Shammai says you can make an edit. You say all my food should be usher to me if this doesn't belong to the truma, it doesn't belong to the king or something of that sort. Don't make shvuah. So no, you can even make a shvuah. I can swear. So I can make it. I could. All the pairs should be usher to me with a shvuah. You can do it with a shvuah too because you're under duress. That's what you know. Beis Shammai Omer lo yiftach lo b'neder. Well, you can't make a net on your own. But if he makes you say, listen, the guy comes to you and he says he's stealing your fruits or he's going to kill you or whatever. He's stealing your assets. And you say that no, they belong to the court or they belong to Truma or something like that, belong to the thing. Are you allowed to upfront swear, or you just can argue and wait till he makes you swear? So the guy, the person, the bad guy, the villain says you swear to. Beis Shammai says you don't start with the net unless he makes you swear. Beis Hillel says you could even say a netter on your own. You don't have to wait till he makes you swear. You're under duress. You swear that it belongs to Truma, etc. Let's say he says, swear on your mother's life, swear that your wife is also to have enough from you if this isn't truma. Beis Shammai says, okay, so you can only swear to what they force you to do. Beis Hillel says, no, you can even embellish it and add more onto the netter. Okay, so an example, they told them, they say Amor. They told them, Amor, tell us that your wife, these villains were chachamim, they knew about the halacha, said, swear on your wife. In other words, Amor, say that your wife is forbidden to have enough from you if this isn't truma or whatever. And Ba'amar konim ishtu banai. He added on not only my wife, but my wife and my kids. Nanali, Beis Shammai says, ishtu muteris banav asurin. You weren't supposed to swear by, they didn't make you swear by your children. They made you swear by your wife. Okay, that part is under duress, but the part that you swear by your kids, that's about that part is binding because they didn't tell you to do that. What'd you have to embellish it for? What'd you have to add on to your kids? Because it's all under duress. You're trying to emphasize the fact, you're trying to demonstrate that it really is truma or it really belongs to the king when it's not. So generally, go like Beis Hillel, you can even embellish it a little bit, and you're allowed to make it. So there's two kinds of nadarim and achal. One is the first case where circumstances prevented you from fulfilling the condition, which would have absolved you of the netter. That you were anything was going to be usher if you didn't show up to eat, or this didn't happen, or that didn't happen, and those were circumstances under control. That is not a netter. Or if the netter itself was made under duress to protect your assets from being stolen or from you being killed or whatever the circumstance, whatever the villains were trying to do, that's also a netter bonus, which is not chal at all. All right, tomorrow we'll pick it up with the Gemara right after the Mishnah.